The Guggenheim Museum is in Bilbao, Spain, and it was designed by Frank Gehry, who is considered by many to be the first digital architect. So here you have two pictures of both Guggenheim museums. The top one is by Frank Lloyd Wright, our Kaufman House designer, and the bottom one is in Bilbao. And imagine before the mid 20th century, most museums, think of the Smithsonian or the British Museum, the Louvre, those are all done in more of the neoclassical style. So they look very Greek or Roman. And it's with these two designs where you really break free of that tradition and the buildings become very sculptural and much more dramatic. So the reason why we have the second Guggenheim, which is in Bilbao, is because the collection of the Bilbao Museum had just gotten too large. And they wanted to expand and to be able to house and display a lot of those pieces. So we wanted to expand, and we wanted to expand really outside the United States. So Bilbao was kind of an interesting choice because one, it had undergone a major decline in the 1980s. Economically, it was going through hard times. It was an industrial city, like in steel, I think was their primary industry. It was a port city, a fishing city, and it just wasn't doing well economically. So there was a push by the Bilbao government to go through this urban renewal program. Let's do something different and try to kind of turn around this economic decline. And I think one of the things they did was to try and put their names in the hat to be the new site of the Guggenheim, and they were chosen. And the building was placed along the Nervion River, and you can see that in that bottom picture there. It's along the river, and I think Gehry's design and the materials are a perfect combination. Pay tribute to the old, and we'll talk about that. And then also to think, forwardly with its design. And it had when it was complete, the museum opened in 1997. The tourists flocked to Bilbao to see the museum. And it wasn't so much as seeing the collection within it, although that's fabulous as well, but you had to go see the really bizarre and amazing and interesting Guggenheim building. And so it's known as what's called the Bilbao effect. And the increase of attention and then the increase in the economy, the money being brought in by tourists. So the Bilbao effect. The reason it is so interesting visually is that Gehry is using something that hadn't been used before in the building of many structures, which was the computer-aided design program, or CAD. And using computer software to create your design gave you the opportunity to be more complex than you had previously, and to see possibilities, and that created a interesting, seemingly complex, which it is, building that then also paid tribute to the place, its history, and again, resulted in this increase of interest and tourism in Bilbao. So content, what I'd like you to put in your notes up at the top where it says era, and I know on the ID it says global contemporary, but can you also put the term deconstructivism? And think of that term deconstruct as you're taking something apart. But for Gehry, it's more like in deconstructivism in architecture as a whole, it's like you're shattering the building and the more traditional design of four walls and a roof. Imagine kind of just exploding that, and you have all these fragmented pieces, and the architect's job is to reassemble them in some way. And it's never going to be in just that traditional four walls. So Gehry definitely fits in that deconstructivist style. Now, Material-wise, he's choosing very modern materials, titanium, glass, and then the more organic material of limestone. And the titanium is definitely the majority of the exterior. And because it is metallic and it's sitting on the water, and typically Bilbao, like San Diego, has a lot of sun, that it's reflective and shimmery. And what that helps create is this almost like fish scale type of look to it, which that's one way it fits into the history of the place and fits in with the environment along the river. It's referencing the history as a port city and trade and fishing, and again, fits lovely into the environment with that fish scale. Now in Los Angeles, you've got the Geary designed Disney concert hall, which looks very similar and is also made of titanium. And when they built that, the temperature of the surrounding buildings went up about 15 degrees because you have that sun, and the heat reflecting off of the building. So that is an interesting effect from Geary's designs there. Because of the reassembling the forms, and Geary creates a lot of lines that curve and undulate, and a lot of different pieces put together so it feels more of an organic kind of building than traditional buildings from the past. If you look at down and below, you can see that the undulation of the lines and the different forms kind of put together makes it feel like something's growing or moving and curving and winding around this river. So in a way, you can connect the Guggenheim Bilbao Museum to the Italian Baroque piece by Borromini, the San Carlo alle Quattro Fontane, with its undulation. Now there you're doing it to be dramatic and to appeal to the congregation in the Counter-Reformation era. Here, you're doing it also to kind of fit in with the area, maybe create a sense of a boat moving, a fish swimming, and to create that drama and interest in the space. It's one of the reasons why people go and see this, because it's so spectacularly different than what has been seen before. It's like a sculpture itself, this building. And again, that's very much in line with Baroque architecture in Italy as well. Now, saying that there's a whole bunch of different lines and forms and a whole bunch of different pieces that are put together, it still has some traditional gallery spaces inside. You look at the bottom, that is also a College Board image. You can see that there are some rectangular or square-shaped interior gallery spaces. That's what you're going to see in most galleries that were, the neoclassical style. However, there are a lot too with interesting shapes, pointed and curving, long and extended and curving. And there's one gallery in particular called the Boat Gallery, and I'll show you that in just a minute. So I think for the floor plan design, it's just showing you how asymmetrical it is, which is going deeply against the neoclassical kind of designs there. And the just deconstructivism style, not just in the exterior, but in the interior as well. Now this is another picture. The one on the far right is the image, and I can find one that's not too blurry, but this is the interior entrance space, the atrium, which again shows you that deconstructivist kind of organic moving based design. You have a lot of twisting and curving glass and steel, again steel, a reference to Bilbao and its past. Limestone as well, you can see the limestone columns and balcony spaces, lots of irregular kind of sized and twisted limestone. This is where you have the elevators, and it's the hub of the museum. It's basically where you go and get centered and then can access the 3 different levels of the museum and access to all the 20 galleries. So this is the heart center. I like how it has all the glass too, because you allow a lot of natural light to come in the space. And because it's in such a beautiful area where the water and the river is all around, it gives you that access of the exterior as well. And then here's an image of that boat gallery with an art piece by Richard Serra inside. Again, long, curving, and taking advantage of the history of the area and the environment of the water and making it look like a boat. The whole thing kind of looks, people have compared the Geary's building to a boat with sails, to a fish, to a flower. And I think all of them apply, and none of them are absolute. But I like that those associations that are very organic with the contrast of that very modern material. It's an interesting comparison and contrast. So for the Guggenheim, function is definitely public space because it's a museum. I would say innovations in art as well, because you're using that CAD computer-aided design to create the possibilities here that have never been possible before in architecture. And then for formal qualities, you could do form, which is very organic and also very reminiscent of shapes, like a boat or a fish. Those forms basically fit the area and the environment and Bilbao's history. That would be definitely appropriate. You could do line with these undulating curving lines that are very organic and also very dramatic. This building is drama and beauty and history and the future too, because it looks so different than what has been done in the past. If you ever want to see a Guggenheim, or not a Guggenheim museum, but the Frank Gehry work, again, Disney Concert Hall in Los Angeles. He did the EMP Music Experience building in Seattle. There are a lot of Gehry structures around the United States and beyond. He is still working to this day, and he is, I think, one of the most interesting architects we have in art history.